The night was thick with rain, the kind that soaked deep into the bones and blurred the city's harsh edges into a wash of glistening shadows. Streetlights flickered in the downpour, casting fractured golden pools on the cracked pavement where a lone police dog stood, soaked and trembling, his torn nine harness a silent testament to battles unseen. The dog's eyes, sharp yet weary, scanned the empty street as if waiting for something, or someone. Then from the mist a small figure emerged. A 7-year-old girl, her soaked dress clinging to her dark eyes wide but steady. She stopped just a few feet from the dog, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father had that same tattoo." The words hung between them like a fragile thread, bridging two lost souls. In that instant, everything changed. The dog who refused to leave, the girl who carried an unspoken grief, and a story of connection, hope, and an unbreakable bond that no storm could wash away. The rain fell relentlessly, a cold, steady rhythm that drummed against the cracked pavement, turning the city's streets into rivers of shimmering reflections. The night was heavy with fog and silence, broken only by the distant hum of forgotten traffic and the soft splash of small feet on wet concrete. Amid the empty alleys and flickering streetlights, a young girl moved slowly, her soaked dress clinging to her slender frame like a second skin. She was 7, but her eyes held a depth far beyond her years, dark, wary, and brimming with a silent story of loss. Her name was Amara, and she walked through the storm as though drawn by some unseen force. Each breath she exhaled came out in small, shaky clouds. Her lips pressed tight against the chill. Her hands clutched a small, worn photograph of a man whose face was etched with kindness and shadows. On his wrist was a tattoo, bold and intricate, a mark that had survived time, pain, and memory. That tattoo, she believed, was the last thread connecting her to the father she had lost. Further down the street, under a flickering street lamp, stood a German shepherd. His coat, once sleek and proud, was soaked and matted, and his harness hung loose, torn in places, as if it had been through 1,000 battles. His eyes, sharp and scanning, held a tired intelligence, a mix of loyalty and longing that spoke of a bond severed too soon. The dog's name was Rex, a Police 9 veteran, who had served alongside his handler until tragedy had pulled them apart. The rain masked the quiet tension between them until Amara paused, just feet away from Rex. Her voice barely rose above a whisper as she said, "My father had that same tattoo." The words were fragile, yet heavy with meaning, a bridge forged from grief and recognition. Rex's ears twitched, his body stiffened with a newfound alertness, as if the girl's words stirred something deep within him. In that soaked, shadowed moment, two broken souls found a fragile connection. The dog lowered his head slowly, a silent nod to the weight of her confession. Amara stepped closer, her small hand trembling as it reached out to rest on Rex's fur, the warmth beneath her palm, a quiet comfort against the cold night. The city, with all its harshness and solitude, seemed to fade around them, leaving only the soft drip of rain and the unspoken promise blooming between them. Both carried scars, visible and invisible. Rex bore the physical toll of his service, but more than that, he carried the heavy ache of loss. The handler who was no longer there, the silent streets that no longer held their shared purpose. Amara's wounds were etched in silence in the empty spaces at home and in her heart where her father's presence once lived. The tattoo was more than ink. It was a symbol of a past neither was ready to let go. A story written on skin and soul. As the storm raged on, the two began to move together. Rex followed Amara with a careful, protective gait, sensing her fragility in the shadows she carried. "I think you understand that better than anyone." Rex's eyes flickered with a knowing glow, the faintest whine slipping from his throat as he pressed closer. In that moment, Amara felt the walls inside her begin to crack, allowing shards of hope to seep through the fractures of grief. Their path was not without peril. Shadows lurked in the corners of the city, figures moving with quiet menace, the kind of danger that thrives on silence and isolation. Amara had learned to keep her head down, to move quickly, but even the smallest hesitation could invite disaster. Rex sensed it too, his body coiled like a spring ready to launch, growling low and fierce whenever a threat edged too close. One night, as the wind howled like a ghost in the empty streets, a figure stepped from the darkness, a man with cold eyes and sharp intentions. Amara froze, heart pounding, her small hands trembling at her sides. But before fear could root her in place, Rex sprang forward. Teeth bared and hackles raised, a guardian unleashed, the man faltered, startled by the dog's sudden ferocity, and fled into the night's shadows. Amara's breath hitched as she knelt beside Rex, her fingers trembling as they stroked his fur. Thank you," she whispered, voice thick with gratitude and awe. In that fierce act of protection, something shifted deep within her. She realized rescue wasn't just about being saved. It was about standing tall alongside those who fight for you, about finding strength in connection. Night after night, their bond grew stronger. Amara found herself speaking more freely, sharing memories of her father, stories of laughter and loss, fragments of a life half-lived. Rex listened without judgment, his steady presence a balm to her aching soul. He became more than a protector. He became a companion in grief, a partner in hope. The tattoo, once a silent emblem of past pain, now symbolized something more profound. A legacy of resilience passed from father to daughter, echoed in the loyalty of a dog who refused to let go. It was a mark of survival, a silent vow etched into skin and spirit that no matter the darkness, they would carry each other forward. As the city's nights grew colder, Amara and Rex found warmth not just in each other's presence, but in the quiet victories of every day survived. They navigated the labyrinth of their fears, slowly dismantling the walls that grief had built around their hearts. Rescue was no longer just an event. It was a process, a shared journey of healing that transformed pain into purpose. In the soft glow of dawn, as the first light spilled over the rooftops, Amara rested her head against Rex's weathered fur, breathing in the steady rhythm of life that pulsed through him. For the first time in a long while, the storm inside her quieted, replaced by a fragile peace born from the rescue within, the rescue of her own battered heart. The sky had darkened again, swollen with heavy clouds that threatened rain like a whispered warning. The city felt smaller beneath the looming storm, streets slick with wetness that mirrored the tension rising between every shadow and every breath. Amara's footsteps quickened, heart pounding not just from the cold but from the unshakable feeling that something unseen was closing in. Rex's muscles were taut beside her, every hair on his body alert, his gaze sharp and unblinking as he scanned the narrowing alleys with a fierce protectiveness born from countless battles. The storm was more than weather. It was a mirror of the turmoil swelling inside them both. Amara, with her fragile hope wrapped tightly around the memory of a father lost too soon, was confronting the fear that maybe safety was an illusion. Rex, a warrior hardened by loss, felt the weight of his own failure to protect the man he loved. Tonight, the darkness wasn't just outside. It was inside them, pressing in with relentless force. They reached the edge of the city, where the buildings gave way to twisted trees and tangled underbrush. The wind ripped through the branches, carrying with it a cold that seemed to seep into bone and soul. Amara shivered, her breath ragged, but she stood firm, clutching the small pendant that had belonged to her father, a faded talisman she pressed against her chest as if it were a shield. Suddenly, movement. Shapes materializing from the shadows, figures cloaked in menace, closing in with silent steps. Amara's chest tightened, breath catching in a desperate choke. Rex growled low and steady, stepping protectively in front of her, every muscle coiled for the inevitable. The world narrowed to the pounding of her heart and the growl of her guardian. The leader of the shadows stepped forward, his eyes cold and unyielding, a threat hanging heavy in the air. "You don't belong here," he hissed, voice like gravel. Fear flickered in Amara's eyes, but beneath it burned a fierce resolve. She was no longer a frightened child. Rex lunged first, teeth flashing in the dim light, a blur of power and loyalty. The attackers faltered, the suddenness of the dog's fury breaking their advance. Amara's voice rose, trembling but clear. "You won't take me. Not now. Not ever." In that moment, something shifted. The storm outside roared, rain pelting down in sheets. But inside, a storm of courage and fierce love erupted. The fight wasn't just for survival. It was for reclaiming a future stolen by loss and fear. Rex and Amara moved as one, a seamless force of determination and protection. The clash was swift, chaotic, but it carried a meaning deeper than the fight itself. It was a reckoning, a moment where past wounds collided with present strength, where fear was met with unyielding defiance. When the last shadow fled into the night, leaving only the steady rhythm of rain and heavy breaths, Amara sank to the ground, her body shaking but her spirit alight. Rex nuzzled her hand, the rough pads grounding her in reality, reminding her that she was not alone. She looked up into his eyes and saw not just a protector, but a friend who had chosen her over despair. who had stood beside her in the storm and refused to let go. That night, the rain washed away more than dirt. It cleansed the scars etched deep in their souls. The fierce battle beneath the storm's wrath had been more than a fight for safety. It was a crucible of transformation. Amara was no longer a frightened child. She was a warrior in her own right, carrying the legacy of her father and the loyalty of a dog who had become her salvation. As dawn broke, the sky cleared to reveal a fragile light stretching across the horizon. Amara and Rex, soaked but unbroken, stood side by side in the quiet aftermath. The city awoke around them, unaware of the silent war waged beneath the storm's fury, unaware of the fragile hope rekindled in two hearts bound by loss and love. Their journey was far from over, but that night marked a turning point. The storm had tried to break them, but instead, it forged something stronger, an unbreakable bond and a courage that would carry them through whatever darkness lay ahead. The dawn was soft and hesitant, spilling pale light across a world freshly washed clean by the night's relentless storm. Amara stood quietly at the edge of the city park, the wet earth beneath her feet cool and fragrant with the scent of rain and new beginnings. Beside her, Rex shifted, his coat still damp, eyes bright with a calm strength that spoke of battles fought and bonds forged in silence. For the first time in what felt like forever, the weight in Amara's chest felt lighter, less a burden and more a memory carried with gentle reverence. The tattoo, the same ink that had marked her father's skin, and the faded patch on Rex's harness, was no longer just a symbol of loss. It had become a story, a legacy written not only in flesh, but in the quiet moments where pain gave way to hope. Amara lifted her sleeve, tracing the faint outline of the same tattoo inked on her own wrist. A gift from her mother, a promise that the past and future were forever entwined. The mark was imperfect, blurred at the edges like a fading photograph, but it pulsed with meaning. It was a story of courage, etched in every line, a reminder that love endured beyond absence and time. Rex lowered his head, his warm breath brushing against her hand as she reached out to touch his fur. The dog, once a lone guardian of broken streets, had become her steadfast companion, a silent witness to her journey through grief and fear. In his eyes, she saw reflected the love of a man gone too soon, the strength that had carried them both through darkness. Their story was no longer about survival alone. It was about belonging. Amara had found in Rex a family that transcended blood, a bond deeper than words, woven through shared pain and healing. Together they had navigated shadows and storms, discovering in each other a resilience neither thought possible. As the sun broke free from the clouds, scattering golden light over the wet leaves and glistening pavement, Amara felt a quiet peace settle over her. The city around them stirred with life, unaware of the fragile miracles unfolding in its hidden corners. But she didn't need the world to see. The bond between her and Rex was enough, a testament to the power of connection, the courage to keep walking forward. She knelt down beside him, fingers tracing the familiar lines of his harness, the worn leather a map of their journey. "We carry them with us," she whispered, voice thick with emotion, "not just in memory, but in every step we take." Rex responded with a soft whine, pressing his head against her shoulder. In that embrace was a promise, a vow that no matter how far the road stretched or how heavy the night, they would face it together. The tattoo's tale was more than ink and skin. It was the story of wounds that healed through presence, of love that never truly leaves, and of two souls bound forever by the quiet strength found in each other's company. It was the story of a little girl and a dog who refused to be broken, who whispered courage to the storm and found their way home. And as the morning sun spilled light over the city, painting the world in gold and hope, Amara and Rex stood no longer lost, no longer alone, but together, writing the next chapter of their shared story in the soft glow of a new day.